Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. Today is a bit of a pinch me moment. If you've ever heard me talk about time confetti, which are those little fragments of time that feel too small to really do anything meaningful with, then you've already felt the ripple effect of Brigid Schulte's work. She coined the term, she cracked open the conversation about modern time pressures, overwork, gender roles, and why it feels like nobody has time anymore. And she deeply influenced my own path as a time management expert. Brigid's a trailblazer at the intersection of personal transformation and systemic change. She's the author of the groundbreaking New York Times bestseller, Overwhelmed: Work, Love, and Play When No One Has the Time, and recently, Overwork: Transforming the Daily Grind in the Quest for a Better Life. Her work has shaped how we talk about burnout and what it actually means to live a good life, not just a productive one. She's also the founding director of the Better Life Lab at New America. She's a Pulitzer Prize winning former Washington Post journalist, a dynamic speaker, and the host of the Better Life Lab podcast. This conversation is deeply personal for me because Brigid's work helped me name what I was feeling so many years ago when I was scattered and exhausted and just felt like I was failing in every direction. And her writing helped me feel seen and gave me the courage to do something different, not just for myself, but now for the women I support through my work. So I am deeply thrilled and honored to welcome you, Brigid. Welcome to the Grow Like a Mother podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. This is
Yeah,
this is really
mutually.
exciting.
It's so cool to be able to have you here, sort of at the source, to share with us all of your wisdom. You are a pioneer in this work, of course. I wonder if you could maybe give the listeners a brief overview of, first off, I would love to start with the new book because I feel like that's fresh and current. So, can you give us an idea of what the book is, how it came about? And then later, I'm going to pick your brain, of course, on some time confetti stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book, it's called Overwork, and I have to say it's really an extension of the first book because when I finished the first book, it was really sort of using my own personal experience, my own personal journey, as the mother of two kids and wanting to be a fully present mother. I put it off for so long because I was so worried. I didn't know how I was going to do it. Would we have the time? Was there money? It just, particularly in the United States where we don't have supportive policies, we don't have, I was working at a newspaper. Talk about an unsupportive place. You're supposed to be working all the time. And if you're not, there's something wrong with you. So I put it off almost till it was too late. So it was so important for me to be the kind of mother, the kind of parent that I wanted to be. But at the same time, I also really loved what I did. I love storytelling. I love reporting. I love learning things. I love sharing what I've learned. And it was just, I was just finding it was so like, why was it so difficult? And I had education and I had resources, it's like, and if it was difficult for me, what was it like for people without resources, without that kind of education or support networks? And when I got to the end of that book, sort of trying to understand both why things are the way they are and how they could be better in a very real way, I came to see that so much of that overwhelm and kind of very gendered ideas about who should do what, like whether you should have paid work or do the unpaid work of care, that a lot of it originates or gets sort of amplified at work and our work culture. And that's why I really wanted to dig into that. And I wanted to understand, work culture, overwork culture, or sort of these ideal worker norms. Why are we so convinced that the best workers work all the time and are present? And if you need flexibility and if you need time for your life, for care, or for just enjoying your life, that somehow you're a lesser worker or you're seen that way, or lots of social science research that's found that over the years. I think it's changed some after COVID, which is exciting, and which is why I want to keep pushing the kind of Overton window of change, if you will, that work can be different. But what I really came to see with work is, I would, I guess the big arguments are we need to begin thinking about what work is in a very different way. That work is not just what we do for pay. You know, like when we talk about working mothers, all mothers are working because all of that is really hard work and valuable. The care that you do, the way that you create your home, all of that stuff is so important. So to me, work is all of the work we do for pay, all of the unpaid work of care and home, but also the way that are involved in our communities, the way that we volunteer, or that we make our neighborhoods a better place. I was very influenced by a Dutch historian named Jan Lucassen, and he said his definition of work is that work is everything that is not leisure time. And so that's really the argument that I make in the book, that work, is all everything that is not leisure. And that the second argument is that all of that work should be good work. It should be fair, that we should have meaning from it. We should feel that it's valued, and recognize that we're all in it together. And then the last point of the book is it's entirely possible. And every chapter, I talk about what's the consequences of what's not working, but every chapter ends with a change agent who's really making a difference, and not just like I think it's really important to remember that we live in our skins as human beings, so there's individual personal transformation, but that we're also part of systems. And so much of the way that we look at work and how it should change is thinking about it as an individual problem. Like, oh, you're burned out, so you need to go do yoga, you need to take a bubble bath. And really seeing that a lot of burnout is from systems, from a toxic boss, or not feeling like you are appreciated for the work that you're doing, or having just too much to do. And so recognizing that these change agents are trying to change both on the personal level, but also that systemic level, and having really great success. And so that, to me, it's really hopeful. It's frustrating that we are where we are, but it's also hopeful, and so important for recognizing that it's not just women who are or should be or want to care and have time for that in their lives, but men, people across the gender spectrum, that care is a human activity, and that if we make time and space for it, we're all better off.
I love that message. And it's so poignant right now because everything feels chaotic in life. There is a lot of pressure coming from, from your workplace, of course, if you're in the workforce, but also from culturally and then social media. There's so much around us that feels like a pressure cooker of expectations and of comparison and all of these different things that factor in that we don't necessarily realize are contributing to this burnout, but they kind of stack, don't they? And then I love how you identify that it is, I don't know if half and half is the right breakdown, but like there's a personal piece and there's a systems piece. I'm curious, would you say the book is more geared towards someone who is in a leadership role who can make change organizationally, or is the book more geared towards sort of the everyday person who is looking to make change in their life?
I would say it's both, really. I mean, I do want to, you know, it's sort of my stealth feminist agenda, if you will, because if you come out and say, this is a book about making, why work needs to change to make room for care, then you sadly, you have halved your audience, because then you're speaking to the choir, because women know this. People with care responsibilities, they get it. So for them, I want them to be seen, and know that they're not alone, and give them some tools. In the back, there's an appendix for things that you can do on your sort of personal transformation. Here's just 10 things. And there's a million, but here's 10 that I found really helpful. For if you're an organizational leader, here are 10 things that you can and should do. And if you're a policymaker for systems change, here are 10 things that you can do. So there is a practical element to the book. But it's not a self-help book in a sense that it's not all kind of like from the personal standpoint, personal transformation standpoint, because I am a journalist and I really wanted to look at systems, and I wanted to use my skills as, both an investigative journalist as well as a storyteller to kind of help weave other people's stories so that we could begin to see ourselves in this larger system. And then, kind of once you have more clarity, we can begin to push for better decisions, better leaders, pushing for better decisions with better data, better evidence. So that's a lot of what the book is really trying to give people the tools to see kind of where we are, the water we're swimming in, decide, we're here because we made choices, and recognize we can make different choices, and empowering them to make different choices personally, and push for different choices at the organizational and then also at the sort of the policy, the sort of societal level.
Yeah, I really appreciated that about the first book as well. You were able to really weave in the research, right? The hard facts and the data and combine it in this human way where you make us feel like part of it and supported. And I was able, of course, really to see myself in so many of the examples that you shared and the stories. And one of my favorite stories, of course, was about you at your son's, I think it might have been his 12th birthday party. This ringing any bells? And so the idea went, at least in my memory, because I tell this story like almost on the daily. The idea was that you were picking up some confetti after the party and you were thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this is what my time feels like. It's so fragmented and it's so and it's spread out everywhere. And I know there's a lot of it if I can put it together, but it's spread out and it just feels like I can't do anything with it. Right. And
Yeah.
that moment,
It was
man,
his 11th birthday, and I remember that very clearly. That's where the image of time confetti came to me, because I was working on a magazine story for the Washington Post magazine, which is what was the sort of the origin story of the book of Overwhelmed. And yeah, I was cleaning up. My husband was smoking a cigar in the back patio, and I'm doing all the cleanup. And we'd had those little poppers of confetti, and I was cleaning it up, and I was so angry with my husband. And I was also, thinking about like, I have a job too. Why am I the one that's doing this? And why do we never have these conversations that go anywhere, but always end up in like, well, I do this, and that he thinks that he does as much as I do, and I know that he doesn't. He doesn't know where the dentist is. He doesn't know where the pediatrician is. He doesn't even know who they are. And so much of what took up so much, not only of my time, but my mental space, he didn't even see. It was completely invisible. And then I realized that I was actually a part of that. And I think my mom was an at-home mom. And I remember her, like, before my dad would get home from work, scurrying around and like sort of, cleaning up and sort of hiding the detritus of a busy day. And I found that I was doing the same thing, that there were a lot of things that I did that I didn't share with him, or that he didn't know, or I'd ask him to do it. And then it wouldn't get done. So I was just like, oh, hell, I'll do it. And never really coming back and saying, that took me like 15 minutes, or that took me a half hour, or, he would say that he would do something and then he would do it badly. And then I would redo it for him. And realizing that, if I was feeling so overwhelmed, it felt like, oh, I was a failure, that I just didn't have it figured out. That you're right. Like, you look on social media, it looks like everybody else has it figured out and they can have these amazing experiences. And we would have like a really fun family experience. But the entire time I'm like in my mind, like, did we do this? Oh my God, what about that? Did I sign this paper? My mind was just going a million miles a minute, just trying to keep track of everything. And it really took like a final breaking point. It was a Thanksgiving, and I do write about that in the first book as well, where it's 2 in the afternoon. We're going to have 18 people over, because not only do I think I have to be the ideal worker and the ideal mother, and somehow look like Jennifer Aniston, with a skinny perfect body, which I did not have, I do not have. And, I also felt like I had to be Martha Stewart, right? So I'm having all of these sort of like other people's expectations shape my day. And I thought I was like cooking in the kitchen. I was just doing all this stuff, and I thought that he was going to put the turkey in the oven. He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to go over to a friend's house, and I'm going to, sit on the back patio and help him with smoke his turkey." I'm like, "You put it in a smoker. You're going to be drinking beer all afternoon while I'm doing all the work." And I tell you, I've written about that before, not just in the book, but other places. That is the closest that I've ever come to getting divorced. I was so angry. I thought, how did we get here? I mean, I thought that we were going to be equal partners. This is madness. And it was from that experience that I kind of did the only thing I know how to do as a reporter. We started going on long walks, and I took a notebook with me, and I just interviewed him, and I tried not to be angry, because we'd always sort of spit and spat at each other. Um, and he didn't feel like I, honored what he did. It's like when he took the garbage out once every 2 weeks, you know what I mean? It's like, so so it was really from there. And then we were working with Jessica DeGroot, who's become a dear friend at the Third Path Institute. really trying to get clear on like, okay, where are we? Let me show you all this invisible work. Let me lay it out. Let me throw it all out. We didn't do a spreadsheet, but we did a huge list. Who does this? Me. Who does this? Me. Who does this? Me. It's like, let me show it to you. And then we got really clear on like, oh, what is it that we want? What do we want together? And then we started little experiments to get from here to there. And we started really small. Who gets out of bed last makes the bed. We still do that to this day. And then it had to be, what are the standards that we can agree on together? Making the bed means putting the pillows on the bed. You know, uh, I would empty out the dishwasher, he would load it. And if you didn't load it in the morning, and I did not rescue him and do it for him, I would take a picture of all of the dishes in the dirty kitchen and I would text it to him and say, really? And then if he came home from a busy day, he would have to do the dishes, even though I tended to work more flexibly from home. That doesn't mean that I should do all of that unpaid work. If we're going to be partners and we're sharing, my time needs to be just as valuable as his time. And I needed to recognize that it was, because I was part of the problem. It's like, oh, I'll do it. Yeah, well, I'm a woman. I must be wired to do the dishes. And I think that's the important thing to recognize, is that you're not. Nobody's wired to do the dishes. It's a partnership, and you put all of the work out on the table, and you divide it up. Doesn't have to be by gender. It can be by what you like and who's available. In the research, what's so interesting is that same-sex couples, it's not like they get it all wired and everything's all perfect and 50-50, but there's less conflict around sharing unpaid labor because they have to talk about it. They can't just assume, oh, mowing the lawn, that's masculine, you do that. Oh, doing the dishes, that's feminine, you do that. You have to talk about it. And then what feels fair is going to be different for every couple, for every time in your life. My husband and I are still a work in progress. I think that's the thing about time and the good life, recognizing that it's a journey, it's a direction. You're moving in service of something. It's not a destination. It's not like you ever get there. So it's okay if you kind of screw up. You got tomorrow, you got this afternoon, you got this evening. So like, get back on the horse and try it again.
And starting small, I think, is one of the main points that I want to make sure people hear is you can't try to overhaul everything in an afternoon, right? You need to make sure that it's manageable so that you can accomplish it, so that you can get the momentum of feeling like the confidence of, hey, we did this, we can do the next one, right? It's these small manageable steps that make a big difference. Yeah, that
Absolutely.
story about Thanksgiving stuck with me a long time too, and I think it's a really cool way to really show the human side of this division of labor or lack thereof, and the mental load that is not invisible to us as the women and the caregivers, but yeah, there's so much to unpack there, I think. I
Well, and
mean,
I
my
think it,
takeaway is just, guys, go buy the book, go read it, and then get the next book, right? But before we wrap today, Brigid, I would love for you to share with us a little bit about the Better Life Lab as well, because that is a huge component of the work that you do. And can you briefly take us through the work that you're doing over there?
sure, sure. And I just briefly about the Thanksgiving story. You should see how we do Thanksgiving now. It's very different. We sit down as a family. We think about what's the experience that we want to have as a family. So everybody has a say. We figure out what's the work that needs to be done to make it happen. And then we divide the tasks and we all do the dishes, and nobody stays up until 2 in the morning doing the dishes. So it's
That's
a really
amazing.
different experience. And I think that's the important thing. It's like, how do you want the time to feel?
Yeah,
And so that's, I think that's been a big takeaway. And the other huge takeaway is that when you share that load, my brain freed up. I think that's why I was able to write the first book, is that we began that process of sharing more fairly. That's why I was able to write a second book, because I'm not doing it all, and I'm not trying to remember it all. And that's just, it's too much for any one person. So the Better Life Lab is very much an outgrowth of, yeah, both books. Really, they're very tied. We work on storytelling, narrative change. We do research. We're part of New America and the Family Economic Security and Wellbeing cluster of programs there. It's a nonprofit think and action tank. So it's a very different way of doing things. And we really talk a lot about the power of story to move work, family, gender, and care. And the goal is, how do we create a world where there's enough time, where people have the opportunity to live the kind of good life, the better life that they envision. And how can we do that through public policy, through workplace practices, and our own cultural attitudes? So it's it's very it's very rewarding, exciting work, and we're always looking for good stories to tell that help people see that solutions are possible.
Yeah. It's such amazing work that you're doing, and I can see how passionate about it you are, and you really care so deeply about giving people the resources to help them get through this, this muck sometimes that life can feel like, and show that there are a other people in the same boat. We're not alone, and there are ways that we can make small changes and big changes and contribute to larger scale changes that will bring us to this better life and to this feeling of more spaciousness in our work and in our lives, and we can have the things that we're looking for. It's just sometimes we need to find the right tweak and find the right tool, right? And that's something I really appreciate about what you provide in your work, is that there are practical tools. And so I would encourage everyone to go over and listen to the podcast, and also, of course, grab the book. But is there anywhere else that we should be sending them if someone's listening today and just loving you as much as I do and thinking they need you in their world?
Ah, well, that's very kind of you. I do have a website, brigidschulte.com. We have a lot of resources on the Better Life Lab, our website there. And one project, if you're really interested in, we're one of the few places that really has practical tools that both give you that awareness, kind of create more awareness and understanding to make the invisible, unpaid work visible, and then help families, couples and families learn to share it more fairly. It's called Better Life Lab Experiments, BLLX. It's run by my colleague Haley Swenson, and I kind of devised it together. We ran a design sprint with IDEO, which was fascinating and fun. And a lot of it was based on my own experience with my husband, like getting clear on current reality, getting clear on, sort of the vision that you have. And then here's a little thing, here's a little tweak, here's a little experiment you can try to get from here to there. And we build in time for reflection and what did you learn? And so BLLX is a great place to go for practical tools. I don't know if you can see it in my bookcase behind me. Eve Brodsky is a great friend and supporter of the Better Life Lab, and she also has a wonderful program called Fair Play, where she does a lot of that, thinking about breaking down tasks and assigning them from thinking about it all the way straight through to execution. And the whole goal is really to free people's time so that regardless of what your gender is, you have the time to do the meaningful work, paid or unpaid, however you define that, that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning and fulfillment, that you have time for care and connection, because we know that that is the source of greatest human happiness, is the time and the quality of our relationships, and that you have time for play and joy and leisure and awe and stuff that isn't necessarily driven or tied to productivity, but just feels great, because why else are we here in life, to live good,
Exactly.
meaningful, but also really fun life.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fantastic. I'm going to make sure all of the links are there in the show notes. So when you're done listening, you just go back, click, and follow your path, go down the rabbit hole, dive into these resources. Brigid, thank you again so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure having you on, and I'm so happy to be able to share you with the Grow Like a Mother community. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.